There we are. Good morning, everyone, or actually, good afternoon. It's coffee time in the afternoon here, and I have some guests today. Over here is Hudson Taylor. He has what do you have on your face? Is that a beard from your milk? And this is Eric. Can you guys say hi to everyone?
Hi!
Yeah, so I am so excited that I get to have guests with me today. My coffee is coming from, it's in my Starbucks Colorado mug that I got when, a couple years ago, when my friend Joe Verissimo was graduating. I went to the graduation party that his family put on, and they had a questionnaire at each table, and so they were asking, how well do you know Joe Verissimo? And I looked at all the questions, and there were a bunch of the questions I didn't know. And then I looked, and there was a slideshow over there, and one of the questions was, how many tractors did Joe rebuild during high school? And so I thought, well, that's an unusual question. How many tractors did he rebuild? So I went and looked and at the slideshow and watched to see how many pictures of tractors I saw with him. Hey, Hudson, that one's too loud, okay, bud? Can you not do that one? Just drink your coffee, okay? Good job. And so I figured out a lot of the questions, answered, and won, I think, first place, and got this coffee mug right here as a result, because I watched the slideshow and figured out all the secrets that I didn't know. And yeah, it was fun. So guys, what are you guys are drinking coffee today. Do you know where your mugs come from? No? We got them up at Russell Gulch at the pottery shop, both of them. They're pretty cool. We got them when you guys were pretty small. How's your coffee? Pretty good, huh? What are you guys doing upstairs? Mommy was gone. Papa was downstairs working. What were you guys doing?
Playing construction.
You're playing what?
Construction.
Oh, construction or destruction?
Destruction.
Were you building things or tearing them down?
Destruction.
Destruction? So you were building it and then tearing it down?
Yeah, destruction.
Is that what the loud noise was about I kept hearing? Yeah, I believe it. I kept hearing some loud noises from up there. So, oh my. So today I have the coffee story. My boys are going to be here with me for a moment longer while they drink their coffee. And then they're going to go back up there and do their destruction. And yep, you're going to go do that, right, Eric? And it's also it's a beautiful day outside. So they're going to go outside as well and play because it's so beautiful outside. So that's the beginning. And today we're still in quarantine, so to speak. The city of Arvada hasn't locked us down, but we're all being asked to stay home as much as possible. And so we're home, and so, all right, guys. Looks like Eric already finished all his coffee. Did you finish your coffee? Oh, almost. Not quite done yet. Okay. But you guys can go upstairs and play as soon as your coffee's done. Yeah, you can say goodbye to everyone, and then we'll see you next time. All right, thanks guys for joining me. And so my working from home looks pretty much the same now as it did in times past. And all right, what are you guys gonna do? You gonna head upstairs now? Okay, we'll see you guys. Because I always work from home every day. The only time that I have to be gone usually is Sundays, and on Sundays I'm at church. And so this past Sunday we took all my live stream stuff and we went and we live streamed the church service. But the rest of the days look fairly similar. And so the title for episode 13 of Coffee with Pastor Joseph was A Path and a Door. And because everyone all around the world seems to be on lockdown or quarantine or limited to what group sizes they can have, there were a lot of my pastor friends who had posted online their sermons, and I it's amazing. Ken Pierpont over in Michigan, he went on the top of his church office building. He and his worship team were up there, and the cars drove into the parking lot, and then they broadcast with radio out to all the car speakers, and everyone was able to sit in their cars with the windows up, listening to the sermon and listening to the music. And according to the newspaper, there were some, instead of amens and hallelujahs and clapping of hands, there was horn honking at appropriate times. And so I thought that was very creative and ingenious. And so I'm excited to see how the church keeps responding around the world when things are not as good as they could be otherwise. And so for myself, we did our live stream on Sunday, and I was talking a bit from the ending of Ephesians, where Paul says that he wants to make his affairs known to the Ephesians, and just discussing how much Paul really cared for transparency, not just in ministry, but in relationship, and how that's important for us even now as we're in quarantine. It can be very difficult to be transparent, but we need to choose transparency. We need to choose vulnerability in order to build trust in community. And so that was what I was sharing about. And then when I came home, I was listening to my friend, Pastor Abel, down in Huánuco, Peru, and he was sharing from the book of Jonah. And as I was listening to what he was sharing, these are some thoughts that I pull out. Now, he was sharing in Spanish, and my Spanish is good enough to understand where he is and what he's talking about, but I don't get all the nuances. I don't get everything he says. And so I'm working on my Spanish. I've been working on it for like 10 years, and I feel like I make very, very slow progress, but I want to be I want to be better at it. But right now, that is what I've got, and so I'm grateful for the opportunity to practice it and listen to someone like Pastor Abel down in Huánuco, Peru. But he was sharing from Jonah, and so as I kept thinking about the book of Jonah, there were several things, and part of this is what he shared, and part of this were just my thoughts as I went back and looked at it. But here you have Jonah, who knows God. He actually knows the Lord and hears from God, and God sends him on a mission. And when he sends him on a mission, Jonah says, I would rather not do that. It says, Jonah chapter 1, verse 1 says, Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare, went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. And so Jonah was trying to get away from the presence of the Lord. And that part is what kind of struck me, is that as he was unwilling to go to his mission field. He knew the Lord. He could hear God's voice. And then God, we know the rest of the story, that he gets thrown into the sea, and then the great fish comes and swallows him. And he is basically put into confinement in a safe place where he can't get himself out until he's willing to obey. And that's the amazing thing to me about the fish. Like the idea of being swallowed by a fish is not a safe alternative. It's not what I would choose. And just, I look on my social media and talk with my friends, and there's a lot of people that would not choose to be stuck at home, or not choose for our country to be in the level of lockdown that it is. And yet it's happened to us. We've been put into a safe place and kind of confined. And so my question for myself, and it was a valid question, has to do with, what is God trying to tell me? God is speaking to Jonah. He's giving him some very clear direction. And he has... it sounds like the baby woke up. We'll see how this goes. We'll see if they come for help, or if they try to comfort him, or if they bring him to me. I don't know what's going to happen. But with Jonah, he is in this place, and he is unable to finish the mission that God has given him. And yet, God has given him this mission. And he doesn't want to do it, so he's hiding. So God puts him in a place until he's willing to listen to him. And so my thought was, what am I trying to run away from? What am I not wanting to hear? So during this time of confinement, so to speak, with the quarantine, being stuck at home, one of the things that a lot of times happens to me is I don't want to hear everything that's happening around me. There's some things that I would rather not hear. In fact, I would rather spend time reading books. I would rather spend time on social media. I would rather spend time talking with other people. I don't always want to be completely quiet and silent and to hear what's happening. Uh-oh, Hudson Taylor. William. Come over here, bud. William, over here. You can't go that way. You can't. Hold on. Here. Hey, buddy. Hey. There we go. Do you want to try some of that? Here. You can try a little bit of this. So this is William Wilberforce. You want to try it? See if it's any good? And so then the other thought that I had this weekend was I was listening to another, my friend up on Shaw Island, Carl Miller, and he live streamed his church service as well. And he was sharing about the parables that Jesus shared with us about how, especially the wedding one, where there was a door, and the door is, at one point, the people come in. Some of the people that were invited, they come in, and then the door is shut, and the people that are still outside are unable to get in. And so I'm thinking about the fact that here is Jonah. There is a way for him to walk. There is a way for him to go and do what God has called him to do. And here are the guests, the wedding guests that have been invited, and there is a door for them to get in, but there's a time for them to get into it. And so I was putting those two thoughts together in my mind. Is that there are times when God is trying to speak to me. There's times when he's trying to send me on a mission. And, I really want to be useful. I want to be used by God. And so when I look at someone like Jonah, and I think, wow, hold on, bud, you're going to get all of this? Mm-hmm. You know that I put too much milk in this one if my boys like it so much. It's just the truth. I put a lot of milk in this one today. It was my second cup of coffee, so. But I had one other thought. Sorry, so I keep going back and forth. But I had one other thought. I had a friend, dear friend, who would share with us when we would be praying around in the circle. Mimi and someone would be sharing what they were struggling with and what they were going through. And Mimi would ask them and say, well, what do you think that God is inviting you into during this time? And the idea was that we see an inconvenience. We see a hard time. And God is saying, come with me, and is giving an invitation and is inviting us in. And so if you take that back to Jonah, when Jonah's sitting at home and he hears an invitation from God in the form of a command that says, go to Nineveh, and he says, I would rather not go. At that point, we see that God is inviting Jonah to come with him and participate with him and see what he's going to do in Nineveh. And because Jonah doesn't want to go, because Jonah says, well, I would rather not do that, he actually ends up missing out on a whole bunch of what God is doing. And we see the end of Jonah, we see him just sitting there and being quite upset that God showed mercy to people, and yet God had asked him to go on a journey. God had invited him through the command. It was an invitation to experience what revival would look like in Nineveh. And I know a lot of people of God who think, wow, if I could just have one time where I could go and preach the word of God like Jonah did and see a response where a whole people, a whole nation would humble themselves and pray before God, that would be so awesome. But Jonah wasn't willing to go on this. He finally went, but he was still begrudging. He wasn't wanting the journey with God. This is my little hobbit. He wants breakfast, 11Cs. Oh, breakfast, second breakfast, 11Cs, supper, lunch, tea, whatever there is, he wants it. He wants as many meals a day as he can get. Okay, William Force. There we go. Let it settle for a little bit. And so, thinking about the fact that many of us are stuck here in quarantine, not necessarily the way we want to be in quarantine, yet here we are, I would like to ask the question for you and for me, what are we running from? What are we afraid of? What are we trying not to hear? What are we trying not to think about? What is the Father inviting us to walk with him in? Because the Father is inviting us. And he is asking us to come with him. I'm going to take this upstairs for just a second and take William. So that was a little crazy, but now William is upstairs playing with his brothers instead of down here trying to drink all my coffee. So I'm here, and I just wanted to, I don't really have a whole lot more that I wanted to share today, other than the fact that I am so grateful that I can hear Pastor Abel down in Huanaco, Peru. I can hear Carl Miller out on Shaw Island. And there's a lot of live streams that I didn't listen to, but they're out there. And so in a strange way, by trying to bring the church and limiting the church where the church can't gather on a Sunday morning in a unique way that God keeps doing with so much of life, he's turned it around to where a lot more people are able to hear a lot more of the gospel being preached because it's being put on live streams, it's being put on video conference calls, and it's just going out in a different way. And so, I don't know what you're facing. I don't know how like I said, you know, with me being at home, working from home, not much changes. I mean, I have to spend a lot of time with my boys on a daily basis, regardless. They're always here when I'm here. Sometimes, you know, at other times, Stacy can take them to the zoo and go do things like that, and that's awesome. But for the most part, we're here, and I find myself in times of stress, like right now to me is more of an inconvenience. I'm not afraid of the virus. I'm looking around, I'm hearing second, third, fourth degree exposures to the virus, but it hasn't come close to me yet, and so my life goes on. However, the inconveniences keep bothering me in several levels, and so I'm wondering, okay, well, what am I supposed to be doing if the inconveniences are here? Is Jesus trying to invite me to come do something that I can't hear? Is it possible that I am so busy trying to drown out the voices? And how do I drown out the voices? Well, I talked last week a little bit, I chatted about how when you're afraid, how you need to replace those images. Well, another thing that I have to do, and this is not about fear, but this is just about being willing to hear God's voice, is I have to be quiet enough to be willing to hear his voice. And so I will do all kinds of things. Like there have been times in my life where I've had games on here that I would use to try to just fill in all the space. There have been times when I played games on the computer. There's been times, lots and lots of times, where I'll be reading something and spending a lot of time reading. And then there's movies to be watched. There's all kinds of things to do to try not to hear the voice of God that is calling to me. And so right now it's kind of funny because I'm talking to you about hearing, and I'm like, all I'm hearing is the boys playing upstairs because they're trying to entertain William. And I have no idea if you can hear all the noise that I can hear. Sounds like you can hear quite a bit of it. So anyway, those guys, they're characters. But the conglomeration of everything that I've been learning is I want to be quiet enough in my soul to be able to hear what God is saying. If God is saying to me, Joseph, I want you to go to Nineveh, I want to be able to hear that. And I want to hear it not as a death threat. Man, now I've got to go do this thing. But I want to hear it as an invitation. What is the Father inviting me in to go see at this time? And so the door, Jesus, as according to John's Gospel, Jesus is the way, he's the truth. Also in John's Gospel, he says he is the door of the sheepfold. And so we have this beautiful thing where God is the door, Jesus is the door, he is the way. And so right now, with with a lot of us being stuck in quarantine, it is possible that you're hearing voices that say you are so stuck, you're never going to get out of here. And if that's true, I'm sorry if you feel that way, but I wanted to tell you something. The voice of the enemy always says you're stuck. There's no way out. This is the end for you. That's what the voice of the enemy sounds like. The enemy wants to kill, steal, and destroy. The enemy discourages you. The enemy says, you're finished, you're done. But the voice of the Father, the voice of Jesus says, I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. So in him there is something, a way to go. There is something to know, and there's a life worth living. He is the door. And so in every situation, every circumstance, wherever you find yourself, when you start looking to him, and that's what happened to Jonah when he finally turned around and he cries out to the Lord because of his affliction, and the Lord answered him. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. That's what he says. And so I am so grateful that no matter how bad things get around me, if I take the time to listen, there is a path, there is a door, and his name is Jesus. And so if you want to see revival, like I do, I have to first say, well, what about me? Am I reviving? Am I listening to the voice of God? Am I using the response to this time of the coronavirus response? Am I using this time to respond to my King? Because that's what I really want to do. So I think I've now repeated myself a few times. I'm going to repeat myself one more time. In the words of my friend Mimi, I'm going to ask you, what is it that God is inviting you into to walk with him during this time? He's not just sending you out. He didn't just send Jonah out. He was going to go with him. It was an invitation for Jonah to walk with God in Nineveh and see the hand of God at work. Jonah obeyed, but missed the deeper experience with him. So, what's God inviting you into? I would love to hear from some of you guys. Hey, Cheryl, I'm glad you're listening. I'm so grateful that we have this way of communicating, but I would love to hear in the comments, what do you see that God is inviting you into during this time? Because for me, one of the things God is inviting you into is what you saw here at the beginning when I had the boys here, sitting here, and when I had baby William. I am being invited into the full throttle years of my life with a bunch of very active, very happy boys all around me, and every day they're so busy doing so many things, and I just love it, and I get to walk this path with them. And I realize that while I'm working from home, they could be a distraction, they could be a problem, they could be something that is bothering me, or it's an invitation from the heart of the Father saying, Joseph, do you want to walk with me and see how I'm interacting with your sons? Do you want to see how these children grow up? Walk with me. And so I want to say, yes, Lord, I want to walk with you. But there's other callings. God might call me out of my house to go do something. And when I have to go out of my house to go do something, I want to see it as an invitation from the creator of the universe, and he wants to go show me something that he's doing, because he's doing things all around the world right now. It's amazing to me what our technology allows us to see with the coronavirus, how we can track around the world. Like I can go and see how things are going in Peru, in Italy, in China. It's amazing that I can see that. And that we can be this aware. And so it is potentially causing us to be able to stop a disease in its tracks. It is potentially causing us to overreact. I'm not sure, but I know this. I am getting to live through a pretty interesting and amazing time because I'm listening to the voice of the Father, and he's invited me to walk this pathway with him. So, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys next week. I'm so grateful that we get to share this time. So, let me see if I can find my closing one here. Here we go. I will see you next week. Blessings.